Craig, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast here today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jared. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So let's dive right in. I want to make sure that if there is anyone, I doubt it, but if there's anyone that has not heard of Cohesity, give us that brief background intro for those listening.
Sure. We'll sort of start with the most recent news and go backwards, I guess. As of now, we're the world's largest data protection company. So when we say data protection, that's the technical term for backup. So you can think backup, which is actually technically a very fascinating topic, even though it sounds boring. So we can talk about that afterwards. But we're now the world's largest because we just acquired Veritas. So Veritas was number 3 in the space. We were like number 7 or 8 in the space. And together, if you measure it as terabytes under management or exabytes under management, we're now number 1 in the space with hundreds of exabytes of data that we protect and keep secure. It started about 11 years ago. The founder's name was Mohit Iran. And interestingly, I have a very long relationship. I mean, I've been following the company for a while. And Mohit started the company with this idea of being able to do analytics on top of backup data or on top of secondary data. And it's taken about 10 or 11 years for us to get to the point where we can actually do that in a robust way with modern AI technologies. So I'm excited about talking about that as well.
Awesome. And we do want to get into the AI piece given the nature of this podcast, so we'll bring that up shortly. Well, first off, congratulations on the acquisition. That's exciting.
Yeah, that's great.
And especially for what that did to your kind of position in the space. That's even more exciting, right? You mentioned something in that intro about like backups are not maybe the most exciting topic, but let's talk about why, like the critical nature of backups and maybe why it should be more interesting to talk about it.
Well, just from a computer science, if you're a computer scientist, you would be fascinated by all of the work that we do to actually get your data on a regular basis to where it needs to be safe and to protect that in an ongoing way. So look, what is backup? We take your data and we sort of store it in the corner, right? This is the traditional view of backup. And then when something goes wrong, we bring it back for you, okay? Well, that's not just what we do. So first of all, we have to figure out how to get all of the data that matters to you. We have to figure out how to get sort of the relative importance of the data because you figure out the frequency at which you want to back it up. We have to manage making sure, like think about now you're a large Fortune 100 bank. Well, think about the massive amounts of data then we have to actually get off of your primary storage and into a safe secondary storage. The amount of data flowing is just huge. So making sure that does that in an efficient, high frequency kind of way is really important. And then once that data is there, it's our responsibility to help you keep that safe. So imagine you had a ransomware attack and all of your primary data then gets encrypted, and then we back up that encrypted data. Well, now you're really in trouble because your primary data is encrypted and your backup data is encrypted. Then we're not doing our job, right? So there's a lot of really fascinating work to make sure that once we've backed that data up, already fascinating work, that we also are able to keep it safe for you. And from an AI perspective, there's a lot of AI involved in that. So I would call it machine learning, but the terms have sort of become collapsed. There's a lot of machine learning involved in that. Like, should it be the case that these files that have yet to have been, we've never seen them be encrypted before, should this large volume of data be encrypted? And if this large volume of data is being encrypted, should we or should we not overwrite your backup? Or should we give you a warning that says, hey, we think you're under attack, and it looks like this data that has a whole bunch of sensitive information, PII or credit card information or health information, is the stuff that's being attacked. Let's work together to help figure this out, and we will keep a immutable copy safe while we're figuring this out, so that you can always go back to that version when you need to. And then finally, when you do have to restore, how quickly can we restore it for you? So we have something called instantaneous restore, which is essentially you point your computers at our system while you're restoring that data, while you're moving it back to where it belongs. You can actually run your business from our file system, right off of the data that we've backed up for you. From a CS perspective, and any of the nerds in the audience will know this, all of that is robust and fascinating and really hard. Pretty exciting, actually.
I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, if everyone explained it with as much enthusiasm as you did, I think everyone would find it super interesting.
Yeah, I
I didn't
don't
want
think
you to.
backup's boring. Many people tell me it's boring, so I always want to, so I want to make sure that people know that it's not, and it's really exciting.
I love it. When we think about, let's talk about now as it relates to AI. So how does leveraging AI, how has it improved the business since you started that? And then I guess, so how are you leveraging it? How has it improved the business?
That's right.
How do you stay on track of the ever-changing landscape of how it can continue to help you? Would love to hear that.
Well, so if we're going backwards first, I mean, part of the reason I joined is to help the company stay on top of that ever-changing landscape because I've been doing AI for 30 years. My immediately prior job, I ran AI for the Department of Defense. I've run AI for companies like Dropbox and Lyft. So I've been doing this for a while, and I'm pretty obsessed by it. And myself and my team stay completely up to date on what's going on. But let's jump back to how AI just sort of works in the system. I already mentioned a lot of this, but there's a whole bunch of AI that just keeps your data safe, that just helps us do our job. So we call that pillar one. And pillar one is the AI that we do to help us do our job in keeping your data safe. So detecting whether it's a social security number, detecting whether this is important health information. That's all natural language processing. Like it's sort of classical machine learning that people have been doing for 30 years. And we've been doing that from the beginning. So, in order to actually do our job, there's a bunch of AI. But there's another aspect to it. We call this pillar two, which is how can we bring AI to you, the owners of the data, to have insights into your business. So we talked with excitement about how that data we get the data over to the corner and we make sure we keep it safe on an ongoing basis. Well, it shouldn't just be in the corner waiting for an emergency, because if you think about it, don't think about backup as old. I mean, with the frequency, we back up some things every 5 minutes. We back up some things every 1 minute. We back up some things every 15 minutes. So it's actually a digital twin of all of the data in your system, right? And so it's very up to date. So we can use that to actually give you insights into your data. So about a year ago now, we launched Gaia, which is a generative AI product that allows you to choose chunks of your backed up data to ask questions of. So you can ask questions of, could you please summarize these documents that are about the following thing? Could you please, you don't have to say please, but could you give me a summary of what happened when we were attacked last year? Or we have an email thread, you have an email thread with a potential customer and one of the salesmen has left. So you could ask, could you please summarize all of the emails who communicated with this potential customer? And you can get these insights back from this data that's just normally just sitting there waiting to be used, but can be used to drive all kinds of business value through analytics, insights, and artificial intelligence. And so Gaia was our first product, but my team, the office of the CTO, spends a great deal of time, most of our time actually, thinking about how do we continue to bring insights and value from that data just sitting there to help you run your business better.
And that's GAIA.
Yeah, generative AI agent, but it's also the Greek goddess of the earth.
I
And
love
which
it.
is interesting because our control plane is called Helios, which is the sun. So now we have the sun and the earth.
Funny story. So, first company I had was basically we were trying to be TurboTax for licensing and credentialing healthcare professionals.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Block Health. The first name of the company was going to be Epion because I got into like the Greek mythology, and I ran into a healthcare company years later that had that name that was like became massive. And I said
What
that
is
was
it?
like,
What is from a Greek perspective? What is
I
Epion?
think it was like the goddess of medicine's like daughter or something like
I
that.
see.
If I'm,
I see.
it was like real. I had to go deep because I like to find like some sort of tie there, right? And I went to that company and I said like this was one of the names I was messing around with, which is funny. They said, well, it's a good thing you didn't because we would have probably sued you. It was just a funny interaction, right?
That's great. Yeah.
But when you're talking about talking to the AI, it was interesting. You said please in there, right? And then you're like, you don't have to say that. It is funny how I find myself when I'm doing like the conversational chat GPT or whatever. I do say please sometimes, and I think I don't know what are you? It's kind of interesting that we still have that human. We're treating it like a human.
So I actually think that's a really fascinating problem, and I actually think it leads to some misconceptions about the machine. So I end up saying thank you to my phone as well. I won't say her name, but I end up, because she's right there. But I end up saying thank you to my phone a lot. And part of me like wants, so I still have young kids, and so part of me wants to make sure I don't train my children to be polite to machines, and I'll tell you why. Already they apparently speak fluently, and because they apparently speak fluently, we impart upon them that they're reasoning. They're not reasoning, and they make mistakes. So we spend a lot of energy figuring out how you, our customer, can understand those mistakes and correct them and be able to make sure your information is strong and correct. But if we treat them like humans in politeness, then we're going to treat them like humans in imparting capabilities to them. And I'm not sure that's the smartest thing to do, even though it's ridiculously hard not to, right?
Yeah,
Because they're speaking a language, and we're used to being, having these rules when we speak a language.
especially as they sound so much like they don't, like you even see like the stuff that 11 Labs is doing now, right? Like the voices they have, it's getting harder to distinguish what's real and what's not. So at some point, that's probably going to be a bigger problem than saying thank you. And once we start asking how's your day going and stuff, that's when we probably have some real
That's
issues,
right.
right?
That's right. That's right. So, Jared, let me actually throw something out here. This is why I don't like the term hallucination. And I don't like the term hallucination because that's a human characteristic. That's something that humans do. From a machine learning perspective, it's simply an error. It just got it wrong, and that's a measurable error, and that's the kind of error that if you're doing evaluation correctly, you could say, okay, well, our error rate is 15%. We want to get our error rate down to 7% or something like that. Treat it as an engineer would treat it. I'm much happier with calling it errors than I am with calling it hallucination, because calling it hallucination already pushes folks towards thinking these things are thinking.
That's true. Yeah, it was. I just gave it a basic group of data the other day just to count how many people like voted for something, right? And just kept messing it up, messing up. That is, we need to get
It's
away
just
from
an
that
error.
then. Yeah, we need to get away from calling it that then. What else are we doing? Like I'm liking this conversation talk point, by the way. What
Good.
else are we doing that we probably shouldn't be doing?
So AI is statistics at scale. And it's really important to think about it that way, because that actually captures what you really are doing, what the system builders are doing. What do you do with statistics? You gather a bunch of data, you use that data to create a model, and then you use that model to predict the future. And most importantly, that data that you gather is from the past, and then it has to be, right? You can't gather data from the future. So you gather data from the past, you build a model, and you use it to predict the future. Now, what's really interesting, what is the assumption there when you apply a model to the future? What's the assumption? The assumption is the future will be sufficiently like the past in order for the model to be effective. Now, but it's always the case that the future is guaranteed to not be exactly like the past. There's so many variables, it's going to be different. So this statistical model is guaranteed to be sometimes wrong. It's really important to hear that. If it's statistics at scale, if AI is statistics at scale, and that's a hill I'll die on, it is, then it's guaranteed to be sometimes wrong. But the way these things speak fluently and authoritatively, now let's bring the chatbot back in. They speak fluently and authoritatively, but they really are just statistics at scale. When you ask it a question, it's going into all of its parameters and it's generating words in a sequence. And it's those words in a sequence, whether they're correct or not, sound fluent and sound authoritative. So we have a tendency as humans to trust things that sound fluent and authoritative. But if you realize it's statistics at scale, you realize that it's guaranteed to be sometimes wrong. I think it's extremely important, and again, we're spending a lot of time at Cohesity on this, to help the user understand it's going to get it wrong. When it gets it wrong, this is how you give feedback to the system. And I think most people don't want that part. I think most people want it to be right, solve their problems so they don't have to think about it. But when you realize it's just statistics at scale, you get the real key point. It's based upon the data from the past, and it's guaranteed to be sometimes wrong. And if you can think about it like that, then you're going to have a different interaction with the system than if you believe it's an agent. I mean, we even use words like agent. It doesn't have agency. It doesn't have agency. It doesn't reason. We say we now have a reasoning agent. It doesn't do either of those things. It neither reasons nor does it have agency. It's just statistics at scale, guaranteed to be sometimes wrong. Important to think about it that way.
It's funny that you just said that. It's kind of crazy I hope the best for these companies starting, and I hope they continue to help us improve across the board, right? Whatever they're doing. But so many of these companies you see out there now that are putting something. Sometimes I feel like we're overstating where the technology is at today too. There's areas that we're understating it too,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we're basically the marketers are having a field day, right? In terms of like it can do
That's right.
everything now. Like
Well, and the
I
users are too, because the users hope for this. The users
yeah,
want this, right?
yeah. It's I mean, just some of these like and it's also getting harder to distinguish like what's just a straight up demo that is in perfect circumstances, or like when I use that, is it going to look like that?
Mm-hmm. one Hundred
Probably
percent.
not. And seems to be happening quite a lot in applications that I use. I'll give you an example from like a even video editing perspective, right? Because I've experimented with a couple of the ones out there.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like, you don't need a video editor. It's all set. Like everything's good. And then you start to use the different tools out there, and you want to talk about I won't say hallucination. You taught me not to say this, so
Error,
it
error.
error. Yeah, it just creates errors. It's wrong. It cuts the wrong part. It's clunky. I remember we had a two framed one like this, and it kept just like when someone was talking, it kept moving over to the other person really slowly. Like for what
That's funny.
reason?
I don't want us to be negative on this. Like, I'm really bullish about the technology. So us talk about large language models. Well, set aside the large part, it's language models. Language models have been around for 60 or 70 or 80 years, and they're very good, or their goal is to be able to translate from natural language to some sort of structure to be able to use in the system, or from some sort of structure to be able to natural language sort of as an output. And large language models based on transformer technology, which has been perfected over the last 10 years or so, are fantastic at this. They've gotten really good. Still make errors. Will always make errors, but they've gotten so much better than they were before. So I'm not negative on the technology. What I want to argue is we should use it in the right place. We should use it as part of the input to get to some structured data so that we can do the right machine learning we want. And we should use it as part of the output. And we should always make sure we have what I call a human escape hatch. How is it that the human can determine that the system got it wrong? And how can the human give feedback to the system to correct it and help the system get better? So let's be positive. I just want us to be positive without too much hype.
Agreed. I love it. Um, as we wrap up here, Craig, what's next with Cohesity that you can share with us here today?
Well, there's no specifics I can share right now. Stay tuned. There will be a lot of specifics, but I will tell you that we are spending a great deal of energy trying to figure out how that data that's sitting in secondary storage can help you run your business better. We want that to be the foundation of your whole data infrastructure and how it can help you find insights, build machine learning models, do biz analytics. All the things that you need to run your business are actually in secondary storage, and we want to help you leverage that to bring real value.
I love it. Actually, one more thing. I forgot to ask this. What are you most looking forward to from the Human X conference?
So I'm really looking forward to the conversations, not just the fireside chat or any talk that I might give, but the kind of people that are there are really exciting to have conversations with. So I'm looking forward to the hallway conversations, the dinner conversations, the lunch conversations, and usually, because of my stance, a couple battles, but those battles are really instructive, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I love it. Craig, thank you so much for joining us here today. Wishing you all the best of luck, and thanks for teaching a lot of awesome stuff here today. It's not a hallucination, it's an error,
Yeah,
right?
it's just
We
an
need that on
error.
a shirt.
Yeah, it's just an error. Oh, that's a great idea.
There you go. It's
Thanks,
some
Jared. I
cohesive.
had a good
Yeah.
time.
Have a good one. Thanks.
Bye-bye.